Hello and welcome aboard WhalePod to day 8 of 7 Days of Rose. Notice I did not say Storytime with Whale 7 days, featuring 7 Days of Rose, because we have indeed finished all the content the game has to offer us. Today is going to be a little different, because I am not speaking to you as Captain Whale today, but as Jason, the real living, breathing human being who puts the person in the personality of Captain Whale. Today's video is going to be a little different, as after all, for the first time ever, I've not only revealed my real name on the channel, but I've also scripted this video. Normally I enjoy keeping my content as authentic and off the cuff as possible, but seeing as today's video will be covering a more serious topic than usual, I figured it'd be best to plan out what I intend to talk about. And hopefully I'll be able to keep from breaking down into tears too frequently, as I've never been able to tell the story I'm about to share with you all today without doing so. With this in mind, if heavy topics make you uncomfortable or trigger you, I'm gonna say this has been your trigger warning, and I would recommend skipping this video. Although I would greatly appreciate if you stuck it out regardless, as talking about these things can help reduce the stigmas surrounding them. I hope to be able to help people come to grips with troubles they may be facing through my own experiences and the narrative of a game that has quickly become very special to me. A game that I've chosen to highlight here on the channel due to its profound effect on me, as well as the utter void for actual content on this game on the YouTubes at this point in time. As far as that goes, the only content I've really been seeing from other creators regarding 7 Days of Rose are guides on how to beat it as fast as possible, for either the Platinum Trophy if you're playing on PlayStation, or all 1000 gamer score if you're playing on Xbox. Now, with that, I'd also like to take a little bit of time here for a couple of shoutouts, or one shoutout and a bit of a request of you all, WhalePod, before we get going here. Starting off with the shoutout, I'd like to give a huge thank you to fellow YouTuber Grok Duck Farmer. Grok, although I did not know this before, I started posting the 7 Days of Rose videos on my personal social media, as I'm still getting channel social media ready to go. But Grok is an old family friend of mine who I did not know had a YouTube channel, but he has stepped up to the plate admirably, sharing news of my channel and this series in particular, both on his channel and in a small handful of Discord servers. For that, I just want to say, Grok, thank you so very much. This means more than you can ever possibly know to me. Just helping spread this series, getting it going further, is part of why I decided to make this series in the first place. Now, for you, WhalePod, I have left a link to Grok's channel down in the description, or I don't know if it's directly to Grok's channel, but I've tagged Grok down in the description, so check out his channel. He's larger than my channel, but definitely still a smaller YouTuber. I took a look at his content, and it mainly consists of Minecraft videos and other things like that, so if that's a bit your speed, go ahead and check out Grok. Now, the second is, I would like to ask for your help, WhalePod, in spreading the news of this series, and in particular this video in this series. This is by far the most important out of all 8 videos in the Storytime with the Whale 7 Days of Rose series. I am doing everything I can to spread news of this series on my own personal social media, in hopes of getting this series out to as many people as possible. But my reach is limited. I can only reach so many people with this series. So, this is where you come in. I would ask you to do things to feed the YouTube algorithm, like, comment, watch the video, listen to what I have to say, and of course, share it around on your social media as well. I believe by doing this, we can reach more and more people who may really need to hear this video's message. Certainly more people than I can ever possibly hope to reach on my own. So, WhalePod, if you would help me with this, I would be endlessly grateful. Now, Back on topic a bit more here. Very few games have ever reduced me to tears before, and none have ever destroyed me quite like 7 Days of Rose. Rose, at first glance, seems like a perfectly happy girl, but over time it becomes apparent to us as the player that things aren't quite adding up with her. As the story unfolds across its 7-day narrative, these signs start to become less and less subtle, even if our protagonist Michael is oblivious to them. Finally coming to a head at the climax of Day 7, when Michael finally realizes how big of a fool he's been and that Rose's plan all along was to stick it to her parents by ending her own life. Yes, you heard that right. This seemingly lighthearted visual novel about a whirlwind vacation romance is anything but, instead choosing to tackle one of the most pressing issues of our day. Yes, 7 Days of Road indeed tackles the issues of unsubscribing, in air quotes, from one's life. No, your ears are not playing tricks on you. This game deals with the issue of a capital S with a side at the end. And I would just also like to add in a little bit of a side note there that that bit is not my own. I am borrowing that from a reel I saw and decided that it was a decent way to address the topic without having to use the actual word, as I know certain places, like the YouTubes, can consider the actual word to be a dirty word. Now, I know that the S word can be upsetting for some people, and for the YouTubes, so from here on out, I will be referring to it exclusively as ending one's life, or unsubscribing from life. Now, once again, I would like to remind you that now that you know a little bit more about the true depth of this video, to just please share this on your social medias. Share it on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter if that's still a thing. Just get the word out there. Help see if we can't help as many people who need to see this video as possible with this. And speaking of helping people, if you're in a situation like Rose's, there are options for you to get help, even if you don't think there are any. In both the description and the pinned comment down below, I will be leaving the number for the National Prevention Hotline for the United States, and also links to a site called Talkspace where people who need help with mental health issues can seek out anonymous online therapy, which may be helpful if you are not able to physically go out and meet with a therapist in person. As I said, I will be linking both the hotline number and a link to the Talkspace homepage in both the description and the pinned comment down below. So if you feel like you're in a similar situation to Rose and need help, please do get help, because I promise you, even if you don't realize it, there are more people out there who care about you than you might think. Now, before we dive into the analysis of Rose's deceptive tragic tale, I just want to state I will be omitting names from my personal stories, as this whole video is a direct response to my reaction to the bad ending. And I have not had time to contact any families of the deceased and ask for permission to use their names. However, for those who helped me through my own struggles, I'd like to give shoutouts wherever applicable. Now, fortunately for us, in our Let's Play of this masterpiece of a visual novel, we were able to avoid the bad ending where, spoiler alert, Rose actually goes through with it. In our Let's Play, our Michael was able to talk her down and convince her that life was still worth living. In another playthrough I did prior to recording this mini-series, I, the absolute fool I am in my quest to see all 3 of the game's endings, set out to see the bad ending. As such, our Michael set out to act as deliberately douchey and shallow as possible, and as a result, when we reached that pivotal moment at the conclusion of Day 7, that Michael's pleas for Rose not to go through with her plan rang out hollow, falling on deaf ears, as we became the final straw that broke the camel's back. Seeing that scene destroyed me. Like, literally destroyed me. I broke down in tears, full on sobbing, for a good hour and a half. I mean, I'm no stranger to shedding a few tears at the ending of a video game, most notably the endings of all 3 numbered Xenoblade Chronicles games, or the conclusion of the Sumeru Archon quests from Genshin Impact. But never like this. When 7 Days of Rose goes wrong, though, boy does the game make you feel like an asshole. On top of that, when it does go wrong, the one remark that stung me the most was when Rose is shouting that Michael is just the same as her parents. Rose's parents are another big sticking point to this game, and while I doubt many of us, well, I doubt more than a small few of us would be able to relate exactly to Rose's experience, I will say one thing we can relate to, is that pretty much everyone out there would agree Rose's parents are terrible people. They are the definition of human waste. They're the kind of business owners that makes the average person look upon a big business in a negative light. And while I normally try to shy away from anything political on this channel, in order for something to be political, there has to be multiple different stances people can take on an issue. And I do not believe there is one here. I do believe whether someone is a capitalist or a socialist or whatever ist you ascribe to economically, I do believe that two individuals who agree on nothing else can agree that Rose's parents are terrible people. Now, that tangent aside, trust me when I say nothing felt worse than knowing my actions and choices caused me through the character of Michael to become the metaphorical 13th reason why, for this virtual girl, for someone who in fact had, over the course of my 2 playthroughs, quickly become an all-time favorite character. And it might have also stung a little bit more because I do see probably a bit more of the 17-year-old version of myself in Michael than I would like to see. Well, particularly in the bad ending when Michael is just sticking to his plan to try and play the cool, suave dude, he is completely oblivious and clueless to everything that's going wrong with Rose. And I will say, 17-year-old me was completely oblivious and clueless to everything. I like to think I'm doing better now. I'm still a little oblivious and clueless, but I like to think that I'm better than before. Also, the topic of unsubscribing from life strikes me a bit closer to home than for a lot of people, as not only have I danced with that particular devil twice before, once in my freshman year of high school, and again in my 4th year of college, but I've also directly known 2 people who have chosen to end their own lives, and I've had 2 neighbors who I did not know but knew of also commit the act of unsubscribing from life. While I've never felt directly responsible for driving someone to such lengths, as bad ending Michael is and must live with for the rest of his life, I still feel like I could have done more. Maybe if I had at least one of these people would still be here. My own 2 bouts with unsubscribing from life, and the experiences I have with friends and neighbors choosing to do so, did teach me a lesson though. One that I'm pretty sure Rose learned as well, but in her desire to spite her parents, I believe she intended to use against them. That lesson is that it doesn't end the pain for you to end your own life. It only spreads it around. And ironically, in Rose's situation, with as much of terrible people as her parents are, it wouldn't have even worked. Her plan was to make them feel awful, but she herself stated previously that they wouldn't care if she were to disappear. In fact, they'd be ecstatic. So with that, it breaks my heart even more knowing that her plan was doomed from the start. Now, with my own experiences with this, let's actually start with the story of a friend of mine. This is technically my second experience with the concept of ending one's own life. This was when a friend of mine who I had been on my high school swim team with for 2 or perhaps 3 years. I want to say 3, I can't quite remember because it has been that long now if he was a year ahead of me or 2 years ahead of me. but I want to lean towards you as just 1 year ahead of me, decided to end his own life. Not only did the news hollow me out more thoroughly than a pumpkin in October, but everyone who knew him, whether it was from swim team, I think he played soccer as well. That would be football for any non-Americans in the audience, people who had been in the same classes with him, or even known him from either around school or from outside of it. The air of misery that first couple days was palpable, and attending his wake later that week was still one of the most somber affairs I've ever taken part of. For him, I can't say I know too much about what was going through his head at the time, but it certainly didn't have the desired effect he wanted. He might have been done with having to deal with everything, but his pain was just passed on to others. Might I even say passed on to others and multiplied. I still remember vividly the feeling of just absolute despair that was going around I don't quite remember if it was Catholic or Lutheran that he was, but just going around that little church the night of his wake. It not only spread it around, but I'd say just by the fact that it spread it around, it amplified things, made the pain worse. So remember, if you're in a position like that and thinking that it's going to make things better, it's not. It's just going to make things so much worse for the people who actually care about you. Even if you don't think people care about you, there's at least one person out there who does. You just gotta find them. Now, with that, we turn to my first experience with this, which was freshman year of high school, when I was being relentlessly bullied by a couple of the dumb sophomores who had been held back their freshman year and were still taking freshman algebra their sophomore year. At its base level, I could have handled the bullying on my own if it was just me. If they weren't bringing other people into it, I don't think things would have ever gotten as bad as they were. But they were bringing other people into it. Not just my close friends, but in particular at the time, another girl in the class, well, a girl in the class, was, she was a bit of a unrequited one-way crush for me at the time. And when they decided to drag her into it and started teasing and bullying her as well over, just by association with me, that's when I decided enough was enough. That if they weren't going to stop picking on her as well, I was going to remove the source of the problem being me. Fortunately for me, right after freshman geometry in my school day was Chinese 1. And my teacher at the time, Wang Laoshi, if you're ever watching this, thank you so much. You are very much one of the biggest reasons I am still here today, is just looking out for your students when you overhear something out of the ordinary. Giving me not necessarily permission, just sending me down to my school guidance counselor to talk things over, sort things out, and get me back on the right track. I don't know why I thought the easiest way to end the bullying would just be to remove myself from the equation, but I did. I still don't know why, and I don't think I'm ever gonna fully understand why. I don't think people ever fully understand why they have these thoughts. But that's just one example of one random act of someone noticing something's wrong and doing something about it, saving my life. Now, my second experience with this concept comes a little later. Now, that comes exactly 4 years later in my, towards the end, midway through my, I guess it was more 3/4 of the way through. November 12th is the exact anniversary of this second near attempt of mine. I say near attempt, and I'll get into that a bit more later. And by later, I mean in a few minutes here. But a second testament to the power of just reaching out to people. Like, reaching out to someone you haven't seen for a while, seeing if they're doing okay. And the effect it can have on someone's life comes from when I was in while my 4th year of college. I think I was at max a sophomore on credit hours. I had just started a miserable part-time job working sunrise shift, that's 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. for those unfamiliar with the shift timing. I was nowhere near close enough credits-wise to graduate. I had just received one of the harshest rejections of my life from a girl I knew from around the apartment complex where I lived. And on top of that, the 2 greatest roommates I'd had to that point or ever had since had recently moved out, leaving me with 2 new roommates and almost no social life. Between my 2 best friends at the time no longer living under the same roof as myself, and the absolutely dreadful hours I worked forcing me to sleep either in the day and miss even more classes, or in the evening when socialization was easiest. That whole a massive just cocktail of negative emotion, negative thinking, led me to the second point in my life where I did consider ending my own life. This time around, I was so close to going through with it. I don't have a camera, so you can't see exactly how close I'm holding my index finger and thumb to each other, but there's basically like 1 grain of sand separation between them. I had planned that when I woke up to get ready for work that next darn early morning, that I wasn't going to make it to work, because I wouldn't be here anymore. I had planned to, after waking up, just drive literally like 1 city block down the hill to the local Walmart, pick up the supplies I need, and perform the deed. However, that plan got derailed when I woke up at around 8 p.m. at night, as I was on a nocturnal plan at the time, and saw a text about an hour and a half, 2 hours old from one of my 2 former roommates who had just moved out recently, inviting me to a game night at their new apartment. And, if you were ever wondering just the power that these small actions can have in people's lives, I hadn't talked to these guys much. I had talked to them, but not as much as I probably could have since moving out, particularly not since I got my job working for I'm gonna say, if I haven't said it already, it was for the United Parcel Service. It was a good job, they paid well, but it was miserable hours, and it certainly doesn't help your mental health. And let's just say, there's a reason why they call it going postal when someone snaps. Now, with that, my whole perspective changed. Just seeing that one random act of kindness from my old roommates and my friends, it turned me around 180. Completely different after that point. I have no doubt in my mind that text message was a miracle sent to save me. And now, Nathan, Brent, if you guys are watching, I think I've told Nathan before, but I don't think I've ever told both of you, thank you. You saved my life. With that one simple act, you guys are still the greatest of all time. And you're also both living proof that seemingly small actions can leave a profound effect on someone else's life. something that even at the time I had been struggling with my own actions, or in this case, inactions, for a couple of years now, bringing me to a fourth example of times my life has been touched by, well, someone ending their own life. This is back to my first year of college. A second friend of mine, she decided she wanted to take her own life. This time it was at the start of winter semester, my freshman year of college. My family had just moved from my native Seattle to the Salt Lake City area that summer, right as I was starting school in the Utah County area. I received news one night that a girl who I had gone to high school with was no longer with us. This one hit me extra hard, as she'd also been a member of the same church as my family and myself. I saw her not just around school, but in church each weekend. Hell, I'd even come close to, well, entertaining the idea of, well, asking her to my senior prom. I didn't necessarily have any sort of feelings for her. She was a freshman when I was a senior, so it was more of just, and didn't really want to have any high expectations for anything like that at prom, and just go with a friend sort of deal, and, you know, give her the bragging rights of being able to say she went to prom as a freshman. As I just stated earlier, we were different graduating classes. I was ahead of her, so I never had much direct interaction with her outside of Sundays, that was. Not only was there that factor, but also the fact that I was now living nearly 1,000 miles away from where I'd grown up, and couldn't attend any sort of funeral, memorial, or wake like I had for my friend from the swim team, making the pain all that much greater. I also couldn't shake the feeling I had that I could have done something about what happened. She never did show any visible signs of sadness or distress, but she never exactly looked all that happy either. I blamed myself for not at least trying to be a friend. After all, that's all it took for both our Michael in this Let's Play to talk Rose down, or even for my former roommate to come around and save me a few years later. And even before the bad ending reopened these old wounds, I'd always wondered if just a small effort like that could have had such a large impact for my friend. This is one other reason why I so much enjoy the story of 7 Days of Rose. Because even though I know I wasn't responsible for this girl who I was friends with taking her own life, I always felt like I could do more. And 7 Days of Rose, with, to a very great extent, the true ending we saw in the series, and the neutral ending I got on my first playthrough, it feels like somewhat of a second chance. I know I can never turn back time and undo what's done. But at least with Rose, I was able to make a difference even if I couldn't for my friend. Now, we do have 2 more stories I'd like to share. I'm not going to go into as much depth on them, as I did not personally know these people. They lived in the neighborhood and my parents knew them. But aside from that, that's the extent of my relation to them. The first was a husband and father who seemed okay one day, and decided he didn't want to go on the next. Let this be a reminder to all of us that even if someone feels fine, they could just be one bad day away from giving up. Next up, we have the son of an elderly couple in the neighborhood. He had been living at home, and from what I had gathered, hadn't been doing too well. But what really chills me about this is how much, looking back in hindsight, that this man, this son of friends of my parents, reminds me of how I've been feeling lately. Speaking more on that, I know that any of you who have seen my more recent community posts will know I'm recovering from a minor illness. Nothing serious, just something that started off as what I thought was a cold, then got diagnosed as seasonal allergies, then finally added a sinus infection on top of all of that. Just a little cough, some congestion, and a little bit of sinus pressure still, but that's not the real reason why I've slowed my recording speed. Speed and my enthusiasm was due to mental health, not physical, that had been getting me down. I've mentioned in a few of my videos being from the Texas area. That's only a partial truth. I do live in the Texas area now and can say that I'm from Texas, but that was not always the case. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, lived the first 18 years of my life there, before moving to Salt Lake City, Utah, to go to college. And I spent the next 8 years there, even if only about 5, maybe 6 of those were spent actually trying to work through college and get a degree that I wasn't really excited about getting because, well, I don't really want to do many things that would require a degree. But that's just not exactly the point I'm going for here. The point is, moving is difficult. And moving when you've been stuck inside for over 2 years during a pandemic is even more difficult. I ended up following my mom here to Texas from the Salt Lake City area, as I had been living at home throughout the pandemic in order to save money while things were at their most dangerous. But when I left Salt Lake City behind, I also left behind an amazing job that I loved working at, 2 amazing groups of friends, one that I saw on a week-daily basis at work, and the others that I would drive an hour north from where I was living to play Dungeons & Dragons with on the weekends. I also left behind, when I came on this Texan adventure, the only real girlfriend I've ever had in my life. Prior to that point, I had only ever gone on like 4 dates with the same girl across like a 9-month period of time during my senior year of high school. This girl I had been dating prior to the move, she was the first time that I would have felt comfortable referring to her as my girlfriend. All that compiling together left with the fact that aside from my mom, who I moved here with, and my brother and his family who live in the area, I knew absolutely no one in the state of Texas when I first got there. I had no immediate friends in the area. I have worked on that since then, and that has helped as well. But for the vast majority of my time in Texas, it's really just been my family and myself. And that was getting me to some dark places. I wouldn't say I was nearly near ending things again, but I was getting there. And what kick-started me off that dark path again? Well, it was playing through 7 Days of Rose. So I'd just like to give a huge shout out to Cross Game Studios, the developers of 7 Days of Rose, and Ratalaika Games, the publishers of 7 Days of Rose. Whether you know it or not, whether any of you ever see this video or not, your work on creating and publishing this masterpiece of a visual novel was very influential for me. It has a powerful message, talks about a topic that needs to be talked about, and does it in what I would consider to be a very tasteful manner. So with that, you have my thanks, and you have my heartfelt support. I hope, Cross Game Studios, I hope you continue with your work. You do it well. And I hope one day you might even consider releasing another visual novel that will be a continuation of Rose and Michael's story. And as such, with my isolation, I threw myself into building the channel. an endeavor which was also proving to be moving slowly, as I knew it would, but slower still than even I had anticipated. Lately I've come to terms with that, but it didn't stop the depression from setting in beforehand. I could have the channel a success quicker if I was simply willing to sell out and pander to whatever trend is going through the gaming community, but instead I chose to stay true to myself and showing content on the channel that I wanted to make. But even then, things only got worse. Burnout settled in and my mental health spiraled deeper into disarray. I had let gaming, something that had once been my ultimate escape, a feeling I sought to share with the world through my channel, and turned it into another stressor. I feel like even more touching for my life than the surprising death of the story between Michael and Rose, that tells a heartbreaking story, but it in general reminded me why I loved games in the first place. While I doubt many of us could ever truly understand a horrible situation like Rose's, I feel like a good number of us can understand Michael's. We as Michael can choose to either be the hero or the villain of Rose's story. Just like we can be the ones to talk to our friends and be genuine and true when they need us most, and perhaps save a life without even realizing it. Or noticing something is wrong and intervening to help. Or we can be like the fake, phony Michael, which results in the bad ending. Too worried about keeping up appearances to notice something is wrong, even though the signs are always in our faces. Now, I implore each and every one of you to be like good ending Michael, and be there for your friends when you notice something's wrong. Don't have doubts like me with my friend from high school, and don't be like bad ending Michael, who has to live with the fact that he inadvertently drove the girl of his dreams to such drastic measures. Be decent human beings and reach out to people when they are giving silent signals that not everything is alright. Be good friends who think to invite an old roommate over for a game night. Be the relative stranger who thinks to say, "Hey, are you doing okay?" And always remember, ending it all doesn't end the pain, it merely spreads it around. Now, I thank you all so much for watching WhalePod. I'm not going to do my usual old outro spiel here, and instead simply say like and sub if you'd like. What's more important is making sure everyone's okay. I try to cultivate a chill environment in my Let's Plays and other series, so if you just need a chill way to escape some drama or other things that aren't going the way you'd hoped, feel free to check out my other gaming content. I'm currently working on setting up some social media accounts for the channel as well, so you guys can get in touch with me more directly there, including a Discord server specifically for the channel. I will of course be posting links to these in the descriptions and pinned comments of future videos when I have them set up. I'm not sure how long this is going to take to get up and running, but until then, feel free to use the comment section here to just talk about whatever you feel needs to be talked about. Just do remember to keep things apolitical. I also try to cultivate a space where one can escape from all the troubles and woes of the world around them, such as politics and the like. Now with all that said, at long last, stay strong, WhalePod. Remember, when you've hit rock bottom, the only way left to go is up. And one last thing before I say until next time, we are going to just say that while my channel is currently not monetized, we're about 10% of the way on subs and a bit over a quarter of the way on total watch time. I have no plans to, once that is achieved, ever monetize this series. I would not feel right making any sort of money or profit off of something as pivotal as drawing awareness to this issue. So, with that said and done, please do think about supporting my other work as well. But at the same time, if you do want to support this, do realize that I am not profiting off this in any way. This is entirely just for helping people. And on that note, until next time, this is Jason, also known as Captain Whale, signing off.